Hi, it's Heather Boyd with Nurture Squared, and today I get to talk to Andrea Page, better known perhaps as Andrea Fit Mom, an instructor, online fitness instructor, and mom in Niagara. We actually chatted, Andrea and I, a month or two ago about attachment and parenting, and it was a great conversation on her Facebook page. And so, Andrea, I'm really excited to get to sit down again and talk with you more, only this time from your end of things.
Yeah, it's super awesome. I love chatting with you. It's always great to hear your ideas and your thoughts, and I get so much validation from speaking with you.
Well, and I do with you as well. It was a great chat, and we'll pick up some of those threads again today. Cool. So I wonder if we could start, because the reason that I know about you to begin with is your business. You're an online live fitness instructor, which means you're running live fitness classes for parents who can attend right in the comfort of their own home with babies crawling wherever babies are going to crawl during the class. But you've been doing this for a while. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about your business and how long it's been running and how it's evolved.
I started Fit Mom, like the original Fit Mom. Actually, it'll be 20 years ago, April 14th. And I was a young single mom who had very severe postpartum depression. Actually, that probably bordered on moving towards postpartum psychosis-ish. I was also very suicidal. And I had a really bad first year with my infant. You know, without going into all those details, which I'm happy to, but I know there's a lot we want to talk about, it really was a sink or swim moment for me at that moment in life, right? So I knew I was spiraling downwards emotionally. You know, I come from a childhood with a lot of adverse childhood experiences myself. I was not prepared for motherhood. I don't know that anyone ever is, but I think as a single mom coming from my life experiences, I went into motherhood extremely naively, with no real sense of what parenting really looked like, as well as I really didn't have a handle on my own mental health, or did I have any knowledge about how my circumstances and my life history was going to impact me. So it was a very troubling time, and Fit Mom, you know, to make a long story short, was one of the ways that I tried to put on an oxygen mask for myself. Throughout my adverse childhood experiences, I had done gymnastics, which was really, really lucky that I just, you know, I'd done some Y program. My mom was a single mom that suffered from severe depression and barely got out of bed. But, you know, I ended up doing this gymnastics program, and physical movement was a way that I had managed my mental health, not even necessarily consciously, but ongoing through my childhood. And by this time I had known, gosh, I better get back to movement. And I was at home with this baby that screamed all the time. I'm pretty certain he has reactive attachment disorder now, and he's now going on to be 21. And I, you know, put him in this crappy baby carrier that somebody gave me, and literally just started doing squats at home because, you know, when I say that I was on the edge, I was on the edge. Like, it was that moment of, we're either giving up and this is it, you know, we're just putting us both to sleep now, or we're going to find a solution. So Fit Mom was really me putting my own oxygen mask on. And I started in downtown Toronto. I think for the first year of my life, I had I would go around Yorkville with these little flyers. I was 26 years old, trying to drag myself out of depression, not motivated, but trying to survive, and handing out these pamphlets. And I think for the first year of my life, I had 4 clients. And, you know, I don't know when things turned around. I always have, you know, when you look back at your life and you remember these moments or these people that helped. You know, I ended up taking a program to learn how to be self-employed, and I met a wonderful woman there who just loved me and supported me. I ended up applying for a job at a place called Kidnasium at Mount Pleasant and Eglinton, and when she found out what I was trying to do, She helped me, like gave me space to try to run my programs and connect me with clients. And, you know, all of a sudden I kind of woke up like 4 or 5 years later, and I had this huge business with like hundreds of clients. And, you know, I worked really, really hard. I was known back then as that mom running around with her baby on her back from one end of the city to the other. And in that, I was struggling a lot personally in my life, right? So all of those other issues weren't going away. And as you know, 20 years ago, the way that we were dealing with mental health and talking about brain science, which was basically a non-existent conversation back then, you know, I was doing what a lot of people were doing with the traditional counseling and the talk therapy, and my life was really just traveling in circles, and this business was growing massively, which was exciting and amazing. But in that, I often feel like that period of my life was really much me living a double life, trying to become the persona of this woman, building this amazing business and an advocate and a champion for women's health. But in my own life, I was so lost and confused. And I'm now in another relationship, and I have 2 more children. This is now, my youngest is now 14. So, you know, when I had him, it was 14 years ago, and that was at the peak. I think I had about 10 locations across Canada at that time, and 1 in the United States. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, my overhead was like 40 grand a month. And I was so in over my head. And I was going back to work. My baby was like, I went back to work, and I think both times with my last 2 when they were under 2 weeks old, which is, but I felt like I had no choice. I think a lot of entrepreneurs now don't know that back then, because now I had moved into a corporation with my partner at that time. And, you know, you couldn't pay into EI. Right. So there was it was really difficult to step away, and I was burning out and at a rapid pace. And at the same time, my older son was also, his issues were becoming worse and worse and worse. So, you know, to make an even longer story shorter, you know, people always say, I look at the online space now, and I remember it was 2009 or 2008. And, you know, and I'd known about Skype, and I was moving out west to try to save my relationship with my younger 2 boys' dad. And I had all these clients in Toronto, but I was desperate to make that terrible situation work, because I did not want to be alone with my kids, because I was already so emotionally burnt out. But in that, so as I was literally walking away from this huge clientele that I built in Toronto to move out west, and I wanted to still be able to work with my clients that wanted to work with me. So that was kind of like my first kind of like, I'm trying to get the online, and people were like, that's stupid. Like, nobody's ever going to train online, which I always go back to when I was walking around with my younger son in like 1999, and I was saying I was going to start Fit Mom. People are like, that's stupid. Nobody's going to like work out with their babies. And I was like, now I feel like when people tell me it's a stupid idea, I'm like, yes.
Yeah, you know that it's a good idea if people are putting it down, because it's novel, it is pushing the envelope, and people don't even know what to think of it. That's when you know.
So, you know, I did have clients who would train with me online, but back even like in 2009, like you see the conversation we're having online now, it's a pretty good conversation. It's clear, and people will be able to hear us. But back then it was pretty shoddy, right? Like the calls would drop all the time, and, you know, so it made a hard case to build a big business off of online training. But when I moved back to Toronto, so I did not save my relationship. I moved back to Toronto with all of my boys, and my older son's situation continued to plummet, which is why I do so much advocacy around youth mental health. But as that time went on, I just became more curious about the online space, again, trying to survive my own life. And because there's something so convenient and time-saving about working online, right? Of course, we know as women who work with women, we do need the human connection, and that's a huge priority. But in day-to-day life, people also need to be able to access the services that they need. And, you know, for me and for my clients, as things kind of evolved in my personal life, and now I just have my younger two boys at home, and I have, you know, done a lot of work and healing on myself, and have kind of got myself out of that state of hyperarousal that I lived in all those years. You know, having the intellect, but not being able to slow my life down enough to apply any of that intellect to practically to my own emotional well-being. So a huge priority in the last kind of 4 or 5 years of my life is, how do I work and really never be away from this house? Because my family and I have been through a lot, and we're going through a lot of transgenerational trauma stuff. And I am working really, really hard with myself and my boys to break that. And in that, I also found, working with my clientele, that moms, and it didn't matter what stage they're at, yes, there's moms and babies, but to be honest, moms and babies sometimes have a little more time than the working moms. You know, I was starting to reconnect with clients who I'd known for 10, 15 years, and finding out, you know, fit mom, their fit mom year off was the best year of their life when they were the most fit, but then they went back to work and they just couldn't manage the demands of it all. Right? Like, they were running from work early in the morning, dropping off kids to daycare, coming home, scrambling, shoving food down their throats, bathing kids, staying up late at night to work, and never having a moment. Right? And so, you know, I started to kind of really push the online more, because I really felt it was an awesome solution for my circumstances and for a good portion of the women that I was working with. And it, you know, it's interesting because now I still feel like the odd person is like, oh, I would never work out online, but then something will come up. They can't make it to an in-person class, and they'll say, you know, can I log in online? And I'm lucky to ever get them back in person, because they realize, oh my gosh, I just saved 40 minutes of travel time. I didn't have to get my baby dressed. I got my workout in. And sure, they go out and they need to go out and do social things, but I mean, for exercise, in the perfect world, if you can do it a few times a week, it's really going to help your mental health, and it's going to help your energy level. You know, getting out to a class 4 or 5 times a week is certainly not going to happen. And my whole thing is, like, go out and have tea or coffee with your friends. You know, don't make your workout this big monumentous mountain you have to climb. Make it simple, right? So online training now, you know, so many years later, after people used to make fun of me, I'd say it's about 80% of what I do, and 20% is in person. And, you know, I feel it's achieved exactly what I've wanted it to achieve, in that it's taken the complexity of busy women's lives in this modern culture where we're so isolated, and self-care is literally so, even when you don't want to deprioritize it, everything is always happening. And now, you know, I've got a whole group of women that work out with me online and get support, not just from me, but each other, because I do try to, like, connect the women online and, you know, talk about, you know, the struggles that we're facing when we can. And I see now that there are women, a huge portion of my clientele that works out with me, that wouldn't be working out. They just wouldn't be able to make it happen. And just to kind of backtrack a little bit, one of the things I'd said, you know, a really sad, frustrating thing that I'd seen is, you know, I was connecting, and, you know, I have one client that I have lots of, but like this one client I work with one-on-one who, you know, is a really busy professional. And I worked out with her throughout her pregnancy and her children, but I literally didn't see her again for 10 years. You know, she was my Facebook friend and whatever, but she reached out to me. She's like, you're doing this online training. She's like, I have so many, like, bad things going on with my body from my job and not being able to work out. And I've gained so much weight over the last 10 years, and I feel terrible. And physically, my energy is low, and I just don't feel healthy. And that has actually been a really kind of common thread for a lot of my kind of returning clients who were my clients when they were younger, who are back to work moms. There's been these periods of kind of, I say the tired years when your kids are young, where they just like self-neglect just took totally over, blew up their health. So yeah, so that's the evolution of Fit Mom to the early days to online.
There's so many threads I want to pick up from that, and I hope we have time to pick up every thread. But one of the things that I find just so fascinating is because you've been doing this for 20 years, the evolution of the online platforms that are making this more powerful to work well, but also making it more acceptable. And I know, in terms of what I'm seeing on your page, you occasionally post little clips of the fitness groups that you run. And boy, everyone looks so engaged and content and happy to be there. And there's a lot of people showing up. I think you've nailed it on the head. When it comes to fitting in the things that we need to do to feel good, it's about doing what's going to work. And face-to-face is important, but if you can access it online, then you're at least accessing it.
Well, and that's it. I mean, I feel like sometimes, I actually just saw a group of moms like locally, but I have moms from all over. I have moms in the States. I have moms from out West. And I'm trying to always like find moms groups like locally who join my online so that they still can get that. I went online the other day and I saw a group of moms from my online classes who had all gone out to dinner together.
Oh,
and it was
wow. Yeah.
So it was really amazing to see that, it is still fostering an ability for face-to-face connection, but the practicality of getting out of your house to do these types of activities regular enough for it to make an impact on your health. That's the piece, right? But yeah, you do need to go connect with people for coffee and go out for tea and have hugs and physical touch and all that good stuff. But, this is an area of your life where you kind of have to just get it done.
Yeah, get it done. And have fun doing it, but you need that in first. And the online piece is the in. I want to bring it up because I just think it's such an awesome clip, but it also speaks to that comment you made about a double life. You recently posted, and I don't know how many years ago it was now, it was a morning show news clip of one of your fitness classes. You have one of your boys in a carrier on your back, I think, and you're running this live in-person fitness class, but you had made a comment about how nervous you were. And in just speaking with you today, knowing that you were in a tumultuous time, like it was a difficult time behind the scenes, and yet the image, of the entrepreneur has to be confident and secure and a certain degree of being outgoing. I love the clip, partly because it would have been before the baby wearing really took off. You would have been on the leading edge of that, Andrea. But also it speaks to that idea of how to balance the challenges that we have going on in our lives behind the scenes with the confidence or the projection that we're trying to make as confident entrepreneurs and business women.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up because it actually brings me to a whole pile of points that has just come up recently in my life. And yes, at that moment, so that was my oldest son. He was about 18 months then. So that was probably, that was very, very early days. One of the clients in that picture, or in that video, who's still a very good friend of mine, has become a very good friend of mine, who's recently got appointed to the bench, as I've gone through my son's mental health stuff over the years, has been a huge support because he has had conflict with the law. And, I feel like, and I say that very candidly because that brings me to the next point. I remember a woman that was working with me. I've always been a very, very open person. I've always felt instinctually that it's more important to be authentic. I really don't buy into the corporate culture of, what it means to be professional, means to basically show up with a tough edge and a sense of deceit in who we are. But yet at the same time, I was always being pressured, but really internally in a battle to say, no, this doesn't make sense to me. I know we're all struggling. Why are we all lying? I don't get it. And especially when I'm working with like this vulnerable population, why am I creating a space where we're all putting on this mask? It makes no sense to me, right? So interestingly enough, and I brought that up because, you know, that woman is there. She's actually, at the end of the month, I got nominated for, and I've apparently won this award.
Oh, congratulations. I wanted to make sure we talked about that because that is a big deal. That is just wonderful.
And, you know, I always say I'm ambivalent and conflicted about it because, you know, it's an award that I'm winning on the back of a lot of personal adversity. And the advocacy that I've done has not, I'm so sorry, I'm so distracted. Get my bank card. Do you know how to edit? I'll help you. You can take my bank card and bring it after. I'm so sorry. Real life.
There we go.
It's okay.
We're good.
Are we recording now?
We are good now. Yeah, we're recording.
Oh my gosh. So anyways.
Real life.
I can't, it is real life because I can see that he's like struggling to figure out his lunch right now. And I told him that. So anyways, so I have won this award. And again, it's been on the back of a lot of adversity in my life. And I feel a lot of, one of the big things that you struggle with after you go through the life experiences that we've gone through and you've got a child or children that are impacted by this, you know, no matter what anyone says, you will continue to muddle through shame and guilt. So to be nominated an award for my advocacy around youth mental health, the award I want to win is that it's resolved for my family and my children. That's the award I want to win, right? So, and in that, I am also acutely aware that my honesty about these issues has helped people, and I've been very grateful. And it continues to inspire me, despite the fact that some people may not choose to understand, or perhaps it's even impacted my business in some ways. But I have to live my truth. I have to live my truth. And there has been far more damage done by trying to show up and live the facade of what society, and in fact, I don't believe it just did, I believe it does damage to everyone. I think it is a part of our kind of social consciousness and our collective consciousness that is damaging everyone and impacting everyone's mental health in a terrible way. And that the more honest, and particularly those of us in positions of leadership, we can be about our struggles and the adverse experiences that we are overcoming and the learning processes that we are going through, the more that we all benefit. And I was really validated the other day because a young woman that I had met when she was, I think, 17 or 18, she was a single mom, and I was mentoring young single moms. And it was at the time, I think Moses was a baby. So yeah, it was about 14 years ago, and she's doing really well in her life now. She's gone on to get married and has 2 other children, and she was applying for a job. And so I'd mentored her in this young single mom program, but then I ended up hiring her. And because I've had these beliefs all the time, like I would bring her over for dinner, her and her baby. I never wanted them to be alone. I just thought like we could all, and in that I was still struggling, but you know, I was really just trying to, I really knew that we were stronger together. I really knew about the sense of community. I had already done a ton of research about these things. So she messaged me the other day saying, you know, I wanted to get this job, or I wanted to get a reference from you. And we started talking, and I hadn't talked to her in about 5 years. And she goes, I just wanted to let you know that they told you, that they asked me who was the most inspirational person in my life. And she said, and I told them hands down, it was you. And I started crying because I said, you know, oh gosh, like the last few years have been so challenging. And, you know, as we've kind of gone through the eye of the storm, and I feel like we're coming out on the other side. And she said, you know, Andrea, you weren't inspiring because you were perfect. She goes, you were inspiring because you were so honest. And she said, I felt like this, you know, and at that time, this young woman, the Children's Aid was involved with her, and she was such a beautiful, bright woman. They were just targeting her, actually. Like, she was a bright young woman who was a great mom, and she was doing all the right things to benefit herself, but she was young, vulnerable, woman of color. And they were just, and she actually told me that I went to one of her CAS meetings with her, and this kind of sloppy, messy worker came in and was like criticizing her. And I literally called this person, I don't remember doing this. And she said, she goes, "You were just such a loyal support and so honest." And I'm like, yeah, that is who I want to be,
Yeah.
right? And that is who we all need in our lives, right? And everybody's lives can be messy to one degree or another. And privilege allows us to avoid some of the mess, you know? So I feel like when I'm talking about like mental health, I often feel frustrated to this day, even within my own life, like our mental health, most of us, I think, are struggling because of the structure of our society. I mean, I feel like that is the big elephant in the living room. And until we start to really dynamically make structural changes in how we live, and I literally say how we live in our homes, not isolated, a mother and father alone with children, and then that we create greater support systems and that we challenge this divide that I believe stems from the Industrial Revolution and colonization, that it's when we attack those things that we will start to see great change.
Well, and we're seeing more and more that there is at least dialogue on those things now that wasn't even on the table, or if they were on the table, it was poo-pooed quite quickly. But there's something, if we back up a little bit, I mean, certainly we could talk about the social structure and culture and the ripple effects it has with families for hours together, and it would be a fantastic conversation. But there was another thread I wanted to pick up from something that you said as well. You talked a bit about the shame and guilt, but also about vulnerability and authenticity. And I think I see those as two sides of a scale, that when shame and guilt are what are affecting us the most, it weighs down the scale. But the counterbalance to that is the authenticity and vulnerability. And I think that's where it shifts. It almost morphs shame and guilt into something that turns into power that can help people. It can help ourselves. But the missing piece there is the bravery that you need to have to be able to be authentic and vulnerable, especially when you are in a position of not just the impression that you're vulnerable or feelings that you're vulnerable, but when you literally are more vulnerable to the outside press, or like press from culture or from involvement by authorities, or for those people of color that are more vulnerable just based on the color of their skin, then bravery becomes I don't want to say higher risk, but there's more at stake, which to me makes it imperative that those who feel they need to be vulnerable and authentic, and I agree wholeheartedly with you that is a key here for helping ourselves and helping others, that we almost have an obligation to ourselves and others to speak up, whether that is about human rights or about mental health of young people or our own mental health, that it's an imperative to be able to speak up, not to the naysayers. We're not there to convince the people that are not listening, but to those that are ready to listen, or those who have been waiting to listen to a message, even if they don't know what that message is yet.
And that's exactly right. You know, that as the saying goes, right, what lives in the dark must come to light. And you are absolutely right that by talking about the things that bring shame and guilt to your heart or your mind can certainly empower you. And in that, what you kind of also mentioned too, the social media piece now, you know, the bravery does need to be there. And, you know, you are vulnerable and open to some toxic backlash when you talk openly about the you know, more difficult challenges of life. And in that, what I've also kind of watched and just observed in my own world over the last, I don't get a ton of it, anymore because I've really surrounded myself with wonderful people, you know, and I have very little tolerance for people who are not willing to open their mind and do the work. And I will protect myself, and I will very quickly give those people no access to me. For me, it's not about imperfection. I celebrate imperfection and deep flaws and challenges, but people who are going to be, you know, toxic and lashing out in a hurtful, mean, judging way that don't have, or without a willingness to understand the issues, or you know, and I think that's something that, you know, I really struggle in social media. I do, you know, when something difficult will happen, particularly to a mother, right? So for example, we, you know, have something right in our very own community where a mom had a tragic incident, and she, it was infanticide, and I don't know if I say that right. And I get very troubled when I watch people's reactions, because, you know, one of the things I've always consistently said as a part of my advocacy, and I will say it doesn't matter what the outcome is, you're not going to prevent another outcome by judging that person, or, you know, being the mass, you know, the mass jury who is deciding, you know, like someone's worth or whether they are good or evil by a snippet of their life. You won't save one more youth. You won't save one more life. You won't save one more baby. You will only save people, and you will only make a difference and impact humanity by understanding the root causes and being a part of early intervention.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've seen the same thing as you have in terms of, yeah, the backlash and judgment that comes from a person not even remotely being able to fathom that that could happen to them or someone they know. And when you cannot even fathom remotely that it could happen to you or someone you know, you need to suspend your judgment and just not comment because the comments are not helpful. They're way out of context, and it's not even, you know, you talk about vulnerability, they're not even letting themselves be vulnerable enough to picture something tragic happening in their family.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, it's interesting because I have done with my own podcast, Hanging On for Hope, I, you know, have heard so many, like, I don't know, I'm at this point now where I realize that anything can happen to anyone at any time. But I also realize that there are people who are more vulnerable because of privilege or socioeconomics or, you know, serious adverse life experiences, will continue to have, you know, traumatic events happen over and over and over again. And it's interesting because when we look at it from a social perspective, right, we're again, in my advocacy, we're often trying to get like that top 5%, because, you know, they're the people who are paying the most taxes, and they are mad about it. And they think that if we, you know, cut mental health or cut education or, you know, cut this or cut that we are saving money. But, you know, those of us who kind of work on the ground in the field are acutely aware of the numbers and what happens when we don't deal with our social issues and we don't help people when they need help. It costs a society emotionally, it costs a society financially. And, you know, again, like with my advocacy around maternal mental health, I have a saying that I've said forever. If you don't take care of mothers, you don't take care of children. And if you don't take care of children, you don't take care of society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my boys actually the other day, I can't remember what the context was, but one of them spoke up and said, yeah, that decision, I don't know whether it was something in the news or something, said a politician, that's really short-sighted. And I looked at him and thought, you've nailed it on the head. Like, you know already at the age of 10 that the decisions that we make are not based on 1 year or a 4-year term. This is like long-term implications for that, again, it ripples through.
Well, and it's interesting, right? Because one of the things that I've said, you know, in my advocacy, because youth mental health is obviously one of my big issues, right? We've got kids sitting on waiting lists, and if they're not getting the help, what's happening to them? Kids who are not mentally stable are often suffering academically, and when you're suffering academically, then you're going to suffer in your long-term life. And when you're suffering in your long-term life, what does that look like? And then we know that systemically, that when somebody is now pushed out of the education system, that it damages their self-esteem, that they're not able to hang out with their regular peers, and they'll typically be gravitating towards other youth who are also in crisis, which is what leads to crime. And, you know, I laugh, but not because I think it's funny, when I see people looking at young people in crisis who maybe have committed, whose behavior has been criminalized, and say, you know, well, they just need to go to jail. And, you know, I agree that the youth justice system does need an overhaul, but not for the same reasons that other people believe. A lot of people just think that it should be canned and that kids should be charged as adults. And every time I see that, I think to myself, you could not even have picked up a book about this subject. It costs almost $120,000 a year to house one inmate in Canada. That is insane. Like, the cost to a society to just throw people in jail rather than deal with their root causes.
Well, especially as more and more, or it becomes more and more clear that, like, the proportion of those who are imprisoned who have a traumatic brain injury or acquired brain injury, not even to touch on early psychological trauma or attachment issues that are contributing. You don't get to the root cause. You can't, you know, we talk about rehabilitation, but I mean, what does rehabilitation look like if we're not looking at the root cause?
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because I have so many things that I want to do in this life, which is, again, the entrepreneurial curse, right? Because one of my ways I want to merge my advocacy and my work is I really want to be a part of a study that goes in and interviews inmates and their mothers, and to try, and anonymously, so that we can, because you know what I always say, I can guarantee that literally 90% of those, especially, you know, violent crimes, yes, I can almost guarantee that 90% of the time it's reactive attachment disorder. Mm-hmm. Right? And that if we could start, it's frustrating for people like you and me on the front lines who see the work that is available to treat people. And I think for me, that's another reason, because people are like, why are you like advocating for like there's nothing that excites me more than when a teacher or a friend of a friend calls me and says, hey, I know this mom and this kid, and the kid's 9 years old and he's getting suspended all the time, and nobody's giving them solutions. Will you go to the school with them? Will you advocate? Will you go to the hospital with them? Yes, 100%, because this kid still has a chance. And for me, I also realize, because the system is not providing the up-to-date current, like the work that we know really does make an impact on brain science, but it's still empowering enough to sit down and have a conversation with a mom and say, these are the things that you can do. These are the things that you can do at home. These are the things.
Especially when, you know, if we wait, and this is where privilege comes in, those who are aware of what the evidence is suggesting have access to what they need privately through their own time, availability of their money, and availability of supports and resources, can choose to access what they need to progress. But that is not everybody. Like right now, it's a very autonomous push to access services. Wow. And many are not in a position to be able to autonomously access what they need to make things work.
And that's interesting, right? Because when you look at mass opinion around people who are in crisis, in my work, I've come across a few very affluent people who have had kids in crisis. Although you don't hear about it much, but not because it's not happening. It's because affluent people can usually keep it undercover. And I have come across the families who have shipped their children to the States to get treatment, because there are better treatment programs in the States than there are in Canada, to the tune of $40,000 to $50,000 for a 3-month stay to get trauma-informed, whatever it be, addiction treatment or whatever the issues that they're dealing with. And so, you know, you'll see that it's no mistake that our jails are also filled with people that are low income, right? And it's not because wealthy people don't face problems. It's because wealthy people can access private resources and support. And support is not just even about professional help. Sometimes it's just about manpower in your house, right? When you're a mom who has, for example, an autistic child, or a child who's slightly on the spectrum, who is dealing with serious behavioral issues, and you do not have the finances to get somebody else into your home, and because this is a huge thing, right? Like, we are seeing more and more autistic children having their behavior criminalized. We are seeing adults with dementia having their behavior criminalized. So instead of dealing with the issues, we're now moving to a mass incarceration model, which is financially and emotionally devastating for any society. Like, you know, I wish people could wake up and see what that looked like 20 years from now, instead of just thinking about, I just want to fix it. This is a Band-Aid, right? And you know, for me, it really always does circle back to maternal mental health, because, you know, we do know what happens to an infant and a toddler in the first years of their life, in the first months of their life, in the first days of their life, when their brain is doing the most development it will ever do in its entire life. We have an obligation to protect mothers, and sometimes from themselves, and without judgment, because at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to push someone over the edge. You know, and it's easy to sit back in your glass house and cast these opinions. But, you know, as the saying goes, if you are not a part of the solution, you are a part of the problem. And the truth is, I also, in my work about maternal mental health, have interviewed very, very affluent women who have confessed secretly very scary moments they've had with their infants.
Yeah, it speaks to the value of that support and the importance of resources that allow people to cope. And if the resources aren't there, it leaves people much more vulnerable.
Well, that's it.
Now I'm looking at our time, and I usually am a stickler for time, but I'm also a stickler for breaking through all these issues and getting a chance to chat. I wanted to finish on the note around bravery and vulnerability, because there's one. I wanted to say thank you because of the posts that you have, or the things that you've been posting on your page, including the question of what is the most, I can't remember how you worded it most recently, the most adverse or the most challenging circumstances they had to rise through or get through. And we're all working, I think, and it seems like a big theme for a lot of the women I know is breaking through that fear, that shame, and that guilt to get through to vulnerability. And your post gives me bravery for speaking up over the issues that I feel are important to talk about. And so I wanted to say thank you, because you're breaking this, you're cracking this nut open, Andrea, just a little bit at a time with your persistence.
Oh, thank you. And I would say too, for women, and you know, as a mother of boys, I'm really passionate that we really start to expand this net and have this conversation for men and boys as well. Because a lot of men and boys are really hurting. And, you know, I also say too, you know, when we look at violence, that especially when it stems from men, you know, when we've silenced and oppressed men emotionally, from a social perspective, and we are oppressive and sexist and homophobic around emotional health, we are, again, it's about our collective health, right? So I'm watching it, especially with my 16-year-old, it's really amazing to watch what an authentic, vulnerable young man he is becoming in his emotional health. It's actually, he's so wise beyond his years, and I feel so grateful that he's done that. And now I see that it is kind of spilling off into some of his peers. Wow. And his younger brothers. And that's it, right? We create space that is safe by modeling the behavior.
Well, and that it speaks to something that I talk about a lot with families I work with, that parenting really is an 18 plus year journey, that the work or the challenges or the effort that we're making to be the best parents we can under the circumstances we have at the time, we don't know how it all accumulates or how it ends up. It's a long, slow project. And I think a lot of times parents can forget that, or people can forget that it's not a quick fix. This is a long, slow project to make meaningful connections, to support people where they're at and support our kids where they're at. And we're learning. We're all learning all the whole way through.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Andrea, I want to thank you. Oh, sorry. I wanted to thank you for
having me.
Oh, it was a pleasure, Andrea. We could talk for 2 hours or more. I still have a whole bunch of little points here we didn't even talk about. I was going to talk to you about core strength and pelvic floor health, about starting out small with only 4 clients your first year, and how sometimes, again, it's the impatience of forgetting that this is a multi-year journey, not just with parenting, but with business too. But it's been a pleasure.
and you know, anyone who's watching, if they want to message me and try out a class for free, they sure can.
And I'll be sure to leave your link and website. That'd be lovely. That'd be lovely. Thanks again, Andrea.
So much, Heather.
Bye for now.